It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Welcome to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, here each and every day on the LRN.FM network here in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, from Freedom's Phoenix Farm. Now, today I get a point of personal privilege. I get to speak with a friend of mine, and you're lucky you get to share in the conversation. L. Neil Smith has been a big inspiration to a lot of hardcore, no-compromise libertarians that we thought his philosophy and methods were mature back then. You know, he'd been doing this for 20 years before we even got to know who he was, and now all of a sudden he keeps getting proven right as time goes on. L. Neil Smith is an award-winning author, science fiction writer. He's won many awards. He's very popular. He has new books coming out, and it's just we're going to get caught up. But more than what's going on recently with him and I and our relationships, people that we know, and what's going on in the movement, we're going to go back. We're going to understand a little bit of history. We're going to see the continuity of what's happening and how we got here, what has been espoused by libertarian and anarchist-oriented thinking, agorist, freedom, voluntarist, leave-me-alonist people, and what has happened. Why wasn't it embraced then? Is it being embraced now? Why? What do we see in the future? And I tell you why. Because L. Neil Smith is paid to think about the future. This is he spends time in a time machine in front of his computer. That time machine is what happens when certain things happen. What do we have opening up this Friday? Atlas Shrugged. You look into the future as Ayn Rand did, and she says, you have this kind of philosophy. You have this kind of rhetoric that's coming from the central authorities. You have that. Let me tell you where this goes. Oh, that roadmap has been, followed pretty straightforward, and she pegged it. But L. Neil Smith has gone further. What happens 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now? What happens? That's what we're going to talk about today. So many things are going on. We need to go back. So we're going to spend 2 hours with me and L. Neil Smith getting all caught up. You got reminisce a little bit and talk about his new books coming out, everything. And you get the benefit of learning from what he's going to share with us. L. Neil, I got you there?
Yep.
You know, you see where we're going with this, what I want to do?
Yes, I do indeed.
So let's go ahead and start off. You're a young man. You have visions of, I want to go to space and government's not invited. And you start writing, you start getting involved in libertarian philosophy and the beginning of the party and so on. I don't want to dwell too much on the party as much as I do the philosophy and how it matured and the freedom movement and how you got involved in it and the passion that you had for it. And I'll get into, when we get up to the time, the influence you had on me. But I want to start off, where do you think we should start?
Well, I could say, just give you a real quick background, which is that I got started in this around 1961 or 62 when, a number of things happened. I fell in with some John Birch Society people who told me I was a libertarian. I didn't know it up until then. And I read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and made a complete obnoxious nuisance of myself to everybody I knew for a while, and that sort of thing. So by the time the party came along, I had been a libertarian for 10 years, I joined the party the first full year it was in existence, which was 1972, and I've been in and out of the party since then, and presently I'm sort of out of it right now.
We can go into all reasons why later, but the promise that the party had when the libertarian movement started to mature, how were you identified before the party? Was the word libertarian used? Did it have a meaning? Did it get kind of co-opted by this political party thing? Was it of service to the movement? Tell me about that. In the beginning, when you started being exposed to the philosophy of Ein and the Austrian economics and all that kind of stuff, how did you identify yourself?
Well, I knew I was a pro-freedom person, and the phrase politically homeless had not been coined yet. And I was involved with the gubernatorial campaign of a fellow named George Hawley, who was running for governor in Florida, and he was the first Republican since the war between the states to be given any kind of a chance at all at being elected governor. That was in 1962, and along the way, some of my fellow travelers, as I said, were Birchers, and when I talked to them, they said, "Well, you're not a conservative, you're a libertarian," and that was the first time I'd ever heard that word before, but once they described it to me, and they had a perfect idea of what it was. They knew perfectly well what a libertarian was. Then I knew that was what I was, and so that when I finally read Ayn Rand, which was not too much longer after that, maybe a year or so, I recognized immediately who she was, what she had to say, and so forth. It was a little hard to understand her literarily. I going through the Fountainhead the first time was very hard going. I was about halfway into it when a friend of mine gave me a copy of Atlas Shrugged, and I read Atlas Shrugged in 2 nights, and then went back and finished the Fountainhead, understanding it perfectly well.
2 nights, Atlas Shrugged. Oh my goodness, man! You must be a speed reader.
I am a very fast reader, but I think it's more. It says more about the book than it says about me. That I didn't sleep. I didn't really eat. I just read the book.
What year was this?
It must have been 63, 62, 63, something like that.
Now, this is not too long after it came out, within less than a decade. I mean, it was what she did.
It was 1957 is when it came out.
So here you have 6 years later. Had you heard of her before? I mean, did it inspire you to start seeking out other people that had read it or embraced the philosophy?
I was pretty philosophically isolated. I mean, my girlfriend at the time was interested in it, but that was about it. And going to high school in northern Florida, and I had never heard of this Ayn Rand guy. I mean, who was he, right?
And how old were you then? How old were you then?
I was 15.
15. Okay.
I was, and in fact, I bought the first Ayn Rand book I ever bought was We the Living. I'm sorry, it was The Fountainhead, because it had a kind of cover that they were putting on science fiction novels in those days. And I practically read nothing but science fiction. So I bought this science fiction-y looking book and took it home. It wasn't science fiction at all. It was about this damned architect in the 1920s, building buildings and blowing them up and things. And so that's, that was my introduction to Rand. And then as time went on, I actually saw, I don't remember, it must have been around 1964 or so, I actually saw Nathaniel Branden in Denver and asked a stupid question and got an answer and all that. And that was the beginning.
Well, let's go ahead, when we come back from the break, with L. Neil Smith. We got plenty of time. We're going to get the whole Monty here, because I want to make sure that we have a full understanding of him and how he impacted me and many other people that I respect. We'll be right back on Declare Your Independence in just a little bit with L. Neil Smith.